Okay, and this is roll call for the special city commission meeting of December 9th, 2020. Benson.
Benson here.
Benson is present. Bruno. Bruno is present. Sarah. Sarah is present. Madam. Madam is present. Madam is present. Minor. Minor is present. Morgan. Morgan is present. Sean. Sean is present. Weber.
Weber is present.
Weber is present. Harry Johnson. Harry Johnson is present. City Manager Lamont. City Manager Lamont is present. City Attorney Denver. Denver is here. City Attorney Denver is present.
Now, public appearances. Anyone wishing to address the commission about something not on the agenda, anyone here would like to address the commission about something not on the agenda?
There is no one on YouTube wishing to address something not on tonight's agenda.
We have one private guest that is what I heard the regional president and CEO of the hospital. What they're doing is that
Can you hear me okay now?
that's part better.
Okay, well, first off, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you again and provide a bit of an update on the request for your speakers to pass before the encouragement petition taken to encourage people to wear masks, and recently your decision regarding additional education for the community. Certainly this is not an issue that is a skipped Yankton by any stretch of the imagination. We all see the numbers nationally in South Dakota in terms of the number of COVID positive individuals, the number of deaths, and so forth. And I'll talk a little bit in a few moments about the work experiences there at the heart. But I'm also here with a request, and I think it's time for us to reflect some encouragement about your to something stronger. Education's always good, but I suspect most people in our community have decided at this point whether or not they are currently wearing a mask, or maybe what they're planning for in the future. For us, and those who have continued for the past number of weeks, and that's been a month now, we have been very busy with both COVID and non-COVID cases. The issue is not that we are just being overwhelmed by COVID patients, but it's in addition to the other patients that we have. And so we have had our highest census that we've had in at least 4 years within the last month, including very high as of today. The models that we have within the bar back in October have suggested that we would see a 50 to 100% increase in COVID admissions in November. That's what we saw. They are now suggesting, based on the county positivity rate, that we'll see another 50 to 100% increase. And that number could actually be driven higher because of potential Thanksgiving days. So we'll see whether that plays out or not. But COVID positive patients tend to be very fair individuals. A lot of times, not only if they go into the ICU, if they're in the medical physical care, they take more staff time, they'll pick up protective equipment, and obviously if they end up in a ventilator in the ICU, then a lot of things. And if that group of patients, in addition to our regular patients that are really stepping up very, very soon. And so we have pulled a lot of staff who are clinically trained but have been doing other things. We have pulled them back into the acute care workforce, the administration from Senate to help us take care of patients and the acute care side. And the reality is we have nobody else left to move there. And so while we have empty beds in patients at times, where we can take our patients, we simply don't have the staff to do so. And that results then in people having to be sent out of town or in cases of some communities out of state to care. And we're asking for your help so that we can avoid that going forward for our community. So in addition to that, we're also getting ready to help administer the vaccine. And as early as next week, we will begin to get some doses of vaccine and begin to provide that vaccine to frontline COVID caregivers, first responders, and others. The state of South Dakota's approach to this has been to have the major health systems in South Dakota, American to the monument, coordinate the planning and implementation of those vaccinations. That's taking more staff on that side of the equation, and we're happy to do it. We're happy that the vaccine is here, even though there'll be a small number to start with, which is okay, that we have a clear processes down there. And we'll be doing this for months to come, depending on the delivery of the vaccine. But in the meantime, I don't have staff left to take care of what we see in many cases as preventable admission, and that is COVID patients. And so we are doing some elective inpatient physical procedures that will start in earnest next week. We've already done a few cases here and there where we've had some people who want our surgery and go forward. We can't do that right now because we have to take care of other patients, and this is something that you can put off for a couple weeks, for a month, whatever it may be. We don't like to do that, and people have plans to have a procedure done, they have their jobs, they have their family plans, and so forth. But right now, we just can't safely do some of those procedures, have those patients in overnight or for multiple nights, and still have staff ready to take care of other patients. So that's part of what we can control. And that's what we're asking for you as a commission to help us do a mass mandate. Again, that's not something we take lightly either. We would much rather that people do this voluntarily. We know it puts you in a challenging position from the enforcement perspective, but we want people to know how serious, how significant this issue is, and that it's a local issue. This is not just something on the coast in the big city or whatever else. We are dealing with this today in Yankton, and I can tell you our staff are tired and are getting wore out and taking care of all of these expectations. We need to spread this out and slow this down so that for the person that has a heart attack and has a car accident and has a stroke, that we have staff here that can take care of them and meet those issues because they're going to happen. We can't always control and prevent those things.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. This is Commissioner Martin. I just want to make sure that the message is getting across, and it seems like there's some technical issues with the lives. And that's so that I'm getting so many messages and seeing so much. I want to make sure that you are given the opportunity that you deserve. So what it sounds like to me is that what's being pumped through the live stream is the sound out of the auditorium. So everybody who's hearing that on the live stream, which is quite a few people, aren't able to hear your message. And I think the message has to come across as good as possible. So I'm sorry to stop everything, but I do think it's worthwhile to make sure that everybody who is viewing this is able to hear what you have to say given the time that you could request tonight.
Thank you.
And so I'm sorry to take an action item out of that for anybody, but whether it's going and somebody there, is that something that we can help them with at this point?
actually working on it. So you can quickly see if there's something you can do. We apologize if people want to do. This is not our regular meeting place or occasion, so just give us a few minutes here. We'll see if there's something you can do. We can choose the number once you can read. And then the agency got maybe that's helpful or but we'll see if there's something we can do. So
Let's try that.
okay, Doug, do you want to say a few words? And I'm sure people on YouTube will be shy about comments. Actions, they can comment. They can hear
Okay, thank you. What I'm saying is that we have significant challenges locally with dealing with this volume of patient activity. We have a lot of sick people right now, and the one population that we think we can slow down having to be admitted is the COVID patients. We've done the things that we can do with our staff. We have been very aggressive on patients that we're taking care of in a home care setting. I can tell you across our footprint, we have about 1,400 patients and COVID positive patients in our COVID transition program. And many of those people are on oxygen, really for the first time, and under normal circumstances, they would be in a hospital. But the reality is, across our state, there is not room for those people in hospitals. And so we've got serious on how we can care for them at home. We're taking care of people in our intensive care units, our medical surgical unit, and we just need to slow down the inflow. And so if we can get people to wear masks, give us time to get the vaccine out, get it distributed, and start to slow this thing down, that will help us ensure that we're there with the community reset. For the heart attacks and strokes and car accidents and everything that people need every year, not just in the pandemic year. So I don't know if that audio is any better now or not. I'm not hearing it on my end when I'm talking, but is that better? This may be just the way it is for tonight.
It's not great. Thank you. Thank you, Bob, for your group here. Many commissioners have questions.
I would just add, Mr. Mayor, we've had 563 positive cases in Yankton County in the last 2 weeks. So that's wonderful. And what we typically see is, a couple weeks after people becoming positive, if they're going to need hospitalization, that's when we will see. And it's probably 2 weeks, and we will see you in the intensive care unit. So that small percentage of people who really become ill and really struggle with COVID. So that's our concern. And if we can help, it's going to.
Oh, I was just saying, this is Commissioner Mulder about where the supplying hospital stations and everywhere is vaccine. What are you hearing for Yankton on the timeline outside healthcare professionals and possibly the other? Is it matching up with the national timeline, or are we?
Well, I would say based on our experience during the pandemic from a supply chain perspective, and that's typically the supplier that's been delivered to us, we don't count on it until we see it on our loading dock, or in this case in our pharmacy. And because the numbers do change, and we've got multiple vendors with different vaccines. The first one would be the Pfizer vaccine that will come through. So, and remember, the first two that we're going to see are 2 doses. So the Pfizer being on the first day and the 21st day. The next vaccine that we get will probably be the first day and the 28th day. So when we get a number of doses, that's really for half of that is the number of people that we can immunize. And so we'll be working through that. We've got a prioritization of people and working through that comes through the division of the CDC and through the South Dakota Department of Health. Across the river in Nebraska, the state of Nebraska is taking a different approach in how they are distributing the vaccine and how people will have access to that. And so I think that this is going to be several months that we're going to be working through this, just depending on how quickly the number of doses come to us. But our first doses we will get will be next week, and so we will start to work with our frontline caregivers. So, in this, if people are aware, we are not requiring people to get this, but we are offering it too. Unfortunately, I don't have a schedule that says we'll get X number of hundreds of doses next week, and X number of thousands the next week, and 3 weeks later we'll get this. But I just say that is a work in progress based on the suppliers.
More questions? All right, if not, I'll thank God for being here tonight and providing us a report contact with this conversation having. Others are welcome to stay on. If not, I'll leave.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks for what you all do for the citizens of Yankton.
With that, we will move on to old business. We have one item of old business, and that is to have a time and place for public hearing to consider a temporary mask ordinance. Before we begin the public hearing, the city manager explain the public comment process. And we'll just add that I ask that we all respect each other, long rules, and set, so we all focus on what each person is saying and not distracted. So, city manager.
Thank you. I'm hearing too that folks here in the building are a little easier to hear for the YouTube watchers, so hopefully this is coming in clearly for all of you or more clearly. We can certainly put together a summary of what Mr. Agner provided to the public and get that out where everyone's being able to. So this is the kind of writing meeting here a little bit and talk about rules and rule laws. We watched a lot of these types of meetings here throughout the country and in the state, and we want to be sure that we're running ours well. So one of the main changes, specifically we're hosting on. Since we're here, never really need to hear, so we're going by their rules, and one of those things is to wear a mask over your nose while you're in school. So thank everybody for participating in that. It's important that we can keep teachers and students in school as long as possible, so they're as healthy as possible. So, if you would like to make a comment on the ordinance tonight, we would ask that you sign up. So, you can call on you and you can wait your turn without cramming together. We don't have to give a crowd exercise to the case, but still for we have officers here in the front who will make sure you're ready to go, and I think you'll have the list from Chief Garrett here as well. And we'll call you up the handful at a time, and then we sort of get that list filled throughout and follow up more people so we can keep it full. We ask that you come to the microphone on your right hand side here, and then exit here in the front, and come back and see if you want to listen, or you get. If you say my family, you can come up or meet right after the meeting if you want to go through. We're going to give everyone 3 minutes to speak. I'm going to keep the time and have a stop up here, so when you get to 2.5 minutes, I'm just going to kind of put my hand up so we go to speak to that, and also the mayor can do that as well. And then that 3 minutes is up, I am going to notify you and give the mayor an indication that it's time to stop talking. So, please 3 minutes. You can already ask, and I guess my time for somebody else, no, it's not, your time is your time. That's a little bit hard to manage, but when I get to that, I think 3 minutes is enough time to say what you need to say. If you have already provided your comment in writing, you did that before 3 o'clock yesterday, it's part of the public record, and I know it's right for the time. So you don't need to come up and reiterate that, you want to say something you use or can, you don't need to say the same thing. Also, if you just want to let somebody know you're in favor or against the ordinance, you can come up and just say, I agree, I'm in favor or against. You don't have to just report visual line or have to say anything more or repeat anything that's been said. Mass stay on when comments are being made at all times. I've worked with the school, I mean, there's that happens, and so we have to do that, comply with that policy. Comments made to the city commission, please. So, no comments on somebody else's comments. The commissioners here and the commissioner on the street will be making some decisions, but we can make comments for them, not for each other. Also, clapping and moving. I suggest that we address clapping and moving. That's, we have to be careful about how much you react to a statement, especially for our people watching on YouTube. It's difficult for them to figure out while we keep drawing seeing that coming to on tax bill. You want to make sure we respect them and we hear everything that's been said. So, certainly be cognizant of that. Let's see. YouTube comments. We are reading out YouTube comments. So YouTubers, if you have comments about the agenda items, you can certainly make those comments. David Bingo is getting by, he's going to be reading those. We're not going to read comments that are commenting on somebody else's comments. So please direct your comments and use to the commission. We also won't read your comments if it's a personal attack or contains profanity or something vulgar. We're not going to read those. It's going to be things that are germane to the ordinance. So we certainly appreciate everyone's help on that. And we will also make sure we include the comments from YouTube on the public record. That's an alternative way to participate. So we will include those comments as part of the public record. If you're asked a question about the commission, I understand it'll take time to answer our thoughts, timer, and won't have to teach you 3 minutes for that. Once all the comments have been made, then Mayor Johnson will likely ask the commissioners here tonight and up on the screen at home for a motion. And at that time, that's the time for the commission to stop. So take everything that's been said and everything that they've read into consideration, and that's their time to stop, ask questions. Maybe some questions for staff, and then they'll make their vote. Albert, our finance officer, will take the roll call, and then he'll say what the vote comes out of. So when it is time to leave, we ask that you do not congregate or huddle up in the lobby or back to the school. So we ask you help with that too. So I think that's all I have. There's questions about how we're going to proceed by the commissioners or anyone else.
So before we get to the public comment period, I will ask our city attorney, our senator, to walk us through the proposed ordinance as we understand of it. Ross, would you take a look?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. The ordinance before you today is quite simply an ordinance requiring face coverings to be worn in all premises open to the public. Now, a face covering is a defined term that includes any sort of face covering which, when properly worn, must cover the nose and mouth completely. It can include a paper or disposable face mask, a cloth mask, a scarf, a bandana, a neck gaiter, or a religious face covering. However, masks that incorporate a valve designed to facilitate easy exhaling, neck masks, or masks with openings, holes, visible gaps in the design or material, or vents, are not sufficient to be constituted as a face covering within this ordinance. And the reason for that is they allow exhaled droplets to be released into the air, so it defeats the purpose of the face mask. A premises open to the public is a defined term to basically include any place out there in the city where we might bump into others that aren't within our immediate household. So the way that definition reads, it includes any place which is generally open to the public, including daycare facilities, and that also is broadly include locations or entities that employ or engage workers, including all private sector entities, public sector entities, non-profit entities of every variety, regular commercial or business establishments, private clubs, and it also includes all forms of public transportation, including buses, taxis, ride-sharing vehicles, or vehicles used for business purposes. So any place where you might bump into others, this ordinance applies to you within the jurisdictional limits of the city of Yankton. Now, the specific regulation reads as follows. Within the city of Yankton, all persons must wear a face covering in a manner that completely covers the nose and mouth in premises open to the public, where 6-foot social distancing cannot be achieved or consistently maintained. The owner or operator of each premises open to the public must make reasonable efforts to ensure that all patrons, employees, and other persons within the indoor public place are complying with the requirements of this ordinance. The owner or operator of each premises open to the public shall post a visible sign at each public entrance notifying patrons of the requirement that a face covering must be worn upon the premises. Now, having said all that, nothing in this ordinance should be construed as preventing any business, organization, or property owner from adopting or enforcing rules or restrictions on the wearing of face coverings or social distancing requirements that are more restrictive than the provisions in this ordinance. The restrictions set forth in this ordinance do not apply to individuals of the following classifications, and those include children under the age of 5. However, parents or guardians of each child aged 3 or 4 are encouraged to have their children wear face coverings, but only if the child can remove the face covering without assistance. Does not apply to those seated at a public place to eat or drink, or while immediately consuming food or beverages. This does not apply to those receiving dental or medical care that prevents them from wearing a face covering. It does not apply to those who are actively obtaining or receiving services that reasonably require the temporary removal of a face covering in order to obtain or receive the service. Does not apply to those with a medical condition, mental health condition, or a disability that makes it unreasonable for the individual to wear a face covering. It doesn't apply to someone who is engaged in swimming, showering, exercising, or a sports activity where the nature of the activity or the level of exertion makes it reasonably impractical to wear a face covering, provided that a minimum social distancing of 6 feet or more is maintained to the extent possible, and further provided that all spectators, coaches, and non-participants are wearing a face covering. Does not apply to those who are public safety workers actively engaged in a public safety role,
including law enforcement personnel, firefighters, or emergency medical personnel in those situations where wearing a face covering would seriously interfere in the performance of the individual's public safety responsibilities. It does not apply to someone who is engaged in an occupation that reasonably prevents him or her from wearing a face covering. It does not apply to someone who is asked to temporarily remove a face covering to verify his or her identity for lawful purposes. It does not apply to someone who is providing a speech, lecture, sermon, or broadcast to an audience, or officiating a ceremony or religious service, so long as 6 feet of distancing from other individuals is maintained. It does not apply to someone who is seated at a desk or standing at a stationary workstation, provided that the desk or workstation is shielded from the public or other employees by a solid wall or a protective glass, plexiglass, or plastic barrier or partition. Does not apply to someone who is alone in an office, room, vehicle, or the cab of equipment or machinery, or an enclosed work area. However, in such situations, the individual should carry a face covering to be used when the person is no longer alone. Does not apply to someone who is communicating with an individual who is deaf or hard of hearing, or who has a disability, medical condition, or mental health condition that makes communication with that individual impractical while wearing a face covering, again, provided that a minimum social distancing of 6 feet or more is maintained to the extent possible. Does not apply to a person who is playing a musical instrument that cannot be played while wearing a face covering, provided that a minimum social distancing of 6 feet or more is maintained at all times. And lastly, it does not apply to someone who is in close proximity to those individuals who reside in the individual's own household and no others. So if you are alone with your family that you live with, even if you are out in public, you do not have to wear a mask in that situation. In all other cases, in public places in this community, as that's defined in this ordinance, you must wear a face mask. This ordinance does not carry a fine or other penalty for its violation. However, all property and business owners are encouraged and directed to refuse service and to turn out all patrons refusing to cooperate with the terms of this ordinance, and enforcement assistance will be provided by the Yankton Police Department under existing laws applicable to trespass. This ordinance, if passed, as it's written right now, would remain effective until 12:01 a.m. on March 1, 2021, unless it is extended, amended, or terminated by another ordinance passed by this commission. However, following a recommendation from the City Health Board, this commission may suspend or, once suspended, reinstate the enforcement of this ordinance by resolution at any time before its final expiration on March 1st. This provision, this ordinance does carry an emergency declaration, which means it becomes effective immediately upon its publication. If it's passed tonight, this would be published on Friday. So Friday would be deemed the date this ordinance would take legal effect in the city of Yankton. My recommendation through the commission, once public input has been received and there are no others that wish to address the commission, if there are requests by the commission to change the language in order that we have an orderly and manageable process with a document that is going to change, I would ask that each respective change be motioned, seconded, and voted upon. I can make those changes in real time I can share my screen with all of you so you can see the changes that are made. And then at the end of the evening, assuming there will be a final vote on this language, we will have a final document that you have all been able to be a part of changing. That will be what is voted upon, and that is what will be published as a passed ordinance, if that is the vote of this commission. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ross. I know go ahead, Amy.
Sorry about that. YouTubers, I think we've made some adjustment. I've heard from a couple of you that it's better. I've heard from a couple of you that it's just a little better. I heard from someone that I sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown. So please let us know on YouTube if you can hear us or not. I don't believe Mr. Ekron is any longer with us for our meetings, so we will do our best to get a summary put together based on his comments for the public. So I know people are asking for that on YouTube. Apologize. Oh, Doug, are you still on? Perhaps not.
I'm muted.
Doug, we're getting asked by the YouTube audience if you would maybe reiterate your comments. Are you able to do that?
Again, can you hear me now?
I think they're hearing you better.
Okay. Well,
I apologize.
Where do you want to start from? I think that the real gist of it is that we're very challenged and have been now going on a couple of months of high census activity at our Sacred Heart. Not all of it COVID, but the additional COVID patients are creating significant challenges in order to care for everyone. And we appreciate the support from the city and encouraging masks. We're just at a point where we think something more needs to be done. The education's always good, appreciate that, but I suspect most people have made a decision on whether they're going to wear a mask or not by this point. And we need to appeal to the community through the city to ask for additional help so we can slow this down. We are suspending elective inpatient surgical cases right now. Officially, we'll do that on Monday, but we've had some cases already where we've just said, we simply can't do this because we don't have the staff to care either for you as a patient or for other patients that may come in and need our services. And so when we look at the number of cases that we've had here in the last couple of weeks in Yankton County, over 500 positive cases, we know that downstream a week or two, some of those people, small percentage, but still some of them will need hospitalization. Some of them will end up in the intensive care unit, need ventilation. In general, our COVID patients are heavier care than, I'll just say, our normal hospital patients. And so they take more staff resources. We have pulled our clinically trained staff that have been doing other functions at the hospital. We pulled them back into patient care. We've shifted nurses from our clinics into patient care. And the reality is we just don't have anybody left. And it's not like we can call somebody down the road to come help us in Yankton because they're dealing with the same types of situations. So for the car accidents and the strokes and new babies and that sort of stuff, that's going to happen. Most of those kinds of admissions aren't as preventable as what we can deal with COVID. And so if we could slow down the spread of COVID, slow down then the resulting hospitalizations that occur when a population has COVID, that will help us ensure that we're here and we're ready and able to take care of the people in our community that need us.
So that's why I'm here tonight asking for support for a mask mandate. It's not something we take lightly, but that's just where we're at. Our staff are worn out. They've been picking up tons of extra shifts, changing their personal lives as colleagues get exposed in the community and then can't work for a period of time. Our team has been very good about adjusting their schedules to ensure that the needs of our patients and residents are being cared for. But we can only carry that on for so long. And I will tell you, our team is tired. They're taking care of very sick, very intense patients, and in some cases, with not very good outcomes. And you all see the obituaries in the paper each day. That, I will tell you, is tremendously hard on staff that is here to care for patients. And when you have bad outcomes, and certainly more deaths than what we're accustomed to, that wears on our team as well. So we just need your help and the community's help in slowing down the spread here for some time. The vaccine is going to start to be distributed across the state next week. That will help as well, but we've got to balance this. It's not like we're going to flip a switch and COVID is going away and will be controlled from a spread perspective just because the vaccine starts to come out. So, you know, that would be maybe a synopsis of the comments that I had earlier. But again, would be open to trying to answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you, Doug, for reiterating that. Also, folks on YouTube, there is a link to the language that Ross went through on the ordinance. So if you had trouble hearing, I am told that the YouTube audio is much better now. So if you did have trouble hearing Ross and his overview, you can click on the link and the language is there for you to take a look at. So I think, Mr. Mayor, if no one has other questions here, we can have you ask Officer Binder, who he has signed up, to start with your public comment period.
Yes, let's move on to the public comment period. I will start off noting that we had 120 pages of comments submitted to us by 3 o'clock yesterday, representing more than 80 individuals in our community and in some cases across the country who have roots here. So appreciate everyone taking the time to provide us your feedback in advance. With that, Officer Binder, do we have anyone signed up to provide public comment in the room?
Jerry Weber, Brian Hunoff, and Cheryl Otto.
And just a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and if you'd start off by introducing yourself and providing your address, that would be appreciated. Mr. Weber.
Jerry Weber, 307 Green Street. It is my hope to come here tonight and implore you to support this ordinance. It's temporary. It has reasonable exceptions. And I know that's not something that you as commissioners take lightly, but you have to hear from healthcare professionals, as we did with Mr. Eckern, and you've probably heard it over and over again that as a healthcare professional myself, we're tired. We have a lot of modifications that we've had to make over the past several months. Those take time, and that extra few minutes in the EMS profession that I'm in can often mean the difference between life and death. I don't want to be over dramatic, but there's certainly a time element to the modifications that we've had to make over the past several months that could be important to a city or county resident. I know that you have to hear from people that are concerned about the business sector of our community, and those are also valid concerns. I know that you have to hear from individuals that have no training in epidemiology, have no training in infection control practices, but somehow they become experts in those fields. I hope that you will give the most weight to your healthcare professionals in this community and the highly respected medical professionals that we have in this community. You know, when I wasn't ready for what Mr. Eckern was going to say, but let me just add, as a paramedic in Yankton County, Let me just add a little bit of a insight to what sort of happens for us at times. And I'm not here to represent the ambulance service of the county. I'm here as an individual that happens to work for them. There are often times that we have a notification from a flight service that's bringing a patient by plane to be transferred to the Sacred Heart Hospital. We'll be there in 25 minutes. And we don't have any control over that. So there's one ambulance that's out of service because it's tied up with transferring that patient that we weren't even ready for. We didn't have any preparation time for. Often occurs in the middle of the night, to be honest. Another call comes in for a patient that's got a fever and is short of breath at the same time. It happens quite often. So what's going to happen when we have that third patient that's having a heart attack, stroke, car accident? They're going to wait an additional 10, 15 minutes for an ambulance to even get to them. And I pray that we can make some changes, slow the spread, and get over this so that we can get back to normal. We want that just as much as anyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. So once again, for those of you, when you're speaking, when you see the city manager's hand go up, that means you have 30 seconds, just so you know what's going on there. Mr. Hunoff, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Brian Hunoff, and I'm sure most of you saw today's update, which showed Yankton County with 652 cases. That puts us again in the top 5 where we've been for a number of weeks as far as among the 66 counties in the state. And the 4 counties ahead of us are considerably larger, and they, even in comparison to their population, when you go on a per capita basis, we're not doing that well. For instance, Minnehaha County has 6 times as many cases, but they have 9 times as many people. Pennington County has 3 times as many cases, but they have 5 times as many people. So not doing very well in terms of the contagion in the community. We're only 30 active cases behind Aberdeen, which has at least 10,000 more people. And we're anywhere from 150 to 350 cases ahead of Watertown, Brookings, Mitchell, Pierre, Huron. And so it's not a good situation locally. Some say masks don't work, but they're wrong. Immunologists, virologists, CDC, World Health Organization, Dr. Fauci, President Trump's own Surgeon General, President Trump's Health Secretary, the White House Task Force, South Dakota Medical Association, and most doctors in the Yankton area agree that masks work and they're needed now. Just ignoring COVID and waiting for this plague to run its course is not the right course to take. This is the time when people who assume positions of leadership need to show that leadership. And unfortunately, our state and national leaders have dropped the ball, leaving it to local bodies like the Yankton City Commission to step up and make our communities safer. Yankton School Board stepped up in August with the unanimous vote to require masks on staff and students. Numbers show what a smart decision that was. There were just 2 COVID cases in our schools last week, and we have been in single digits most other weeks, and 90% of those infections actually occurred outside of the schools. My wife's a 5th grade teacher. She tells me that our school kids have done great with the mask requirement right from the start. Our sons and daughters are showing us how to make sacrifices for the greater good. And if students aged 6 to 18 can wear a mask all day, I would hope most adults are capable of the same. Some will say a mask ordinance violates their freedom, but we do not have the freedom to put others at risk. And this is no different than seat belts, stop signs, speed limits, and other laws that make us safer. Well, the only difference is that it's a temporary ordinance with no penalty. I think about our doctors and nurses, all of our healthcare workers who risk their lives to care for COVID patients. They're asking us to mask up in public. And that should be the least we can do to protect them and perhaps reduce their workload.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to cut you off there. Sorry.
Okay.
That's 3 minutes. We just want to make sure everyone's given an equal amount of time. Thank you. Ms. Otto, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Otto. I wrote a letter as well, but I wanted to come in and just say I'm in favor of a mask mandate for Yankton. You know, freedom includes consideration for your neighbors and your community. Coronavirus has a component where you don't know you're sick and you're potentially breathing and infecting others, and they're unaware of the fact that you're sick as well. So let's keep people healthy out of the hospital by wearing masks. I know these are hard decisions, and I applaud all the hard work that you guys do for our county and for our city, and thank you.
Thank you. Officer Binder, who's up next?
Mallory Schulte, Mike Grave, and Kurt Bernard.
Hello, Mallory Schulte. I live at 909 West 13th Street. I'll keep my comments really brief tonight. I asked the commission to consider all of the people in Yankton that have jobs that compel them into public spaces. I'm a lawyer. I represent primarily elderly people, and there are times we're all compelled out of our home. And right now that means being compelled into situations where many people are not wearing masks. And I don't feel safe in those situations, and I know my clients don't. And this mandate would go a long way in making them feel more safe until a vaccine is available. Thank you, and thank you for your consideration on this issue.
Thank you.
Mike Grave, 912 West 14th Street. I guess I just want to talk about the data. Right now, if you look at the case data versus deaths, COVID has a 99.9% survival rate. The CDC and National Institute of Health did studies in 2002 and 12 that mask effectiveness against viruses and found they were ineffective. Dr. Fauci led some of those studies. N95 masks have a 0.3 micron filter. COVID size is 0.125 to 0.06 microns. That means you could stack 3 to 5 particles of COVID side by side and still slide it through an N95 mask, let alone half of these pieces of cloth that people are using that have massive holes in them. Which goes to explain why states that have mask mandates since April are still seeing the same spike that we're seeing here. Dr. Milroy used a Kansas study last week to say that we need masks and they were effective, that counties without masks had a 100% increase in cases. Sounds great, but what she's not telling you is this. 0.08 cases per day per 100,000 decrease with the mask, 0.11 cases per day increase with masks. That's 0.19 cases per day difference. So if the full state fully masked up, it would change 1.33 cases per day decrease. If Yankton masked, it would change 0.038 cases per day. That is 30 days to decrease 1 case. We're going to divide our city even worse for that? Doesn't make any sense. But you say there's more deaths. 2019 had 2.8 million deaths. 2020, January through November, we're at 2.65 million. 240,000 average per month. That's 2.85 million total. So we're on pace to be an equal year in deaths. But now you're going to say, they say that it changes by demographics. It doesn't. You look at the data of demographics of people that die every year, every month, and the percentage of elderly, 60 to 70, 50 to 60, 40 to 50, all the way down, those numbers have stayed equal for the last 5 to 10 years. No change in 2020. So the same people, the same age range are still dying, but now we have COVID to blame. So I guess I don't know why we're going to divide our community more, and we're all doing this off a test that even the developer of the test said anytime you replicate and use the test over 20 times replication, the PCR test, that you're almost guaranteed a positive result because you're looking for any traces of the item you're looking for. So anytime over 20 PCR test replication, you're going to get a positive result. And most of these tests have not been FDA approved, and I'm finishing right now. And most of them are testing 25 to 40 replications. So the testing is giving us false positives, and we need to be aware of the data.
Thank you, Mr. Grave. Mr. Bernard.
Hi, guys. Thank you for taking time to let us speak. Kurt Bernard, downtown Yankton. I really didn't want to comment so much on the face mask, but on the what are we going to do this winter to try to save lives. Traditionally, winter months are really bad for colds and flus, and I expect it'll be the same for COVID. So I wrote a note Sunday night, and I talked about masks, but then I rethought about it Monday morning, and I said, really, what we're trying to do is save lives. And I'm advocating that we try to pick up a active program that says, hey, if you look at the data, as people have said, it seems to be people who are unhealthy in some way, have health problems in some way, have immunity compromised situations in some way. If we can get to those people and actively do things that actually cause them to exercise more, eat better, reduce weight, whatever is needed that will increase their health, that seems to be the people that can get COVID, but they survive it. The people who don't survive it are those people that have health issues. So while City Commission is considering masks tonight, what I'd really advocate is could we get an action plan in place that says, hey, here's how we're going to become a proactive city that's going to help people to be healthier, and that'll help fight off the COVID deaths.
Thank you, Kurt.
Ricky Patton and Bernie Hunoff.
Hello, I'm Ricky Patton, and I live in Yankton. I'm a new resident of Yankton. Masks have failed wherever they have been tried, and the majority of people who test positive or show positive tests claim to have worn masks regularly or all the time. It's an unrealistic and unattainable goal to think that masks will stop the spread of viral pathogens. Viral particles are up to 5,000 times smaller than the pores of a mask, therefore useless. Masks also do not prevent the viral particles from entering the eyes. So if you don't also mandate goggles, it's useless. Also, I would say to the city here, when we're going to mandate masks, are you going to also mandate biohazard waste bins to avoid the city from being contaminated with these contagious masks everywhere? We're asking people that are sick to stay home, and healthy individuals that respect the personal space of others. If we do that, there's no need for masking. I just want to quote from the label on the masks themselves. It says, these masks are not respirators and will not provide any protection against the COVID-19 or any other coronavirus or other contaminants. And I'd like to quote Anthony Fauci, who he said, there is no reason for people to walk around with a mask. People keep fiddling around and touching their face. You might feel safer, but you're not. He also said asymptomatic infections have never been a driver of infectious disease. In the entire history of infectious disease, it's almost always symptomatic spread. And finally, I'd like to quote the New England Journal of Medicine, which states, we know that wearing masks outside of healthcare facilities provides little, if any, protection from infection. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive action to anxiety over the pandemic. It is also clear that masks serve symbolic roles. Masks are not only tools, but they are also talismans. that may help increase a perceived sense of safety. Yes, masks are only a symbol and a reminder to stay in a constant state of fear and suspicion of our neighbors, which is not healthy. It is a talisman, an object thought to have magic powers and bring good luck. I refuse to wear a mask as a good luck charm. I wish that the people who are doing the test here in Yankton could address their PCR test and how many cycles they're using to come up with these positive tests, and how do they define a case? All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bernie Hunoff. I'm a resident of our great city, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thanks to the city commissioners and the staff for presenting this ordinance to the community. I wasn't going to say anything. Then I got to reading some of the comments and hearing the comments, and pretty interesting discussion, pretty interesting philosophical discussion. Great thing about living in America, we can all find a study that supports whatever we want to believe. So that's a good thing. I think overall it's a good thing. Sometimes it kind of paralyzes us, though, in taking action. This whole thing came to mind the other night. I was reading a story about the Titanic and about the iceberg that gashed the Titanic, and it was like an unseen enemy that just came along, and all of a sudden there was a crisis, right? And if you read that story, all these selfless acts that were taking place immediately, people didn't even have time to think. There's just all these acts of selflessness and sacrifice. And as I was reading that, I got to thinking, so what if it had taken like a month for the ship to sink? And what if they'd all gotten into these ideological arguments? What would have happened? You know, there's a time for philosophical and political and ideological arguments. Certainly a time for that, and I love it as much as anybody. And then there's a time for action. And we're in a crisis. You heard from some of our healthcare community leaders, Doug just recently, and others. I mean, we're in a crisis that could get a lot worse before it hopefully gets better with the vaccine. So we're in a crisis. We can keep arguing philosophically and having a lot of fun with that, or we can take action. If you haven't had a friend or a relative or a neighbor yet who's been impacted by this disease, then you're a very lucky person. But it has impacted a lot of people already, and it's time to take action. Masks do work. I can find you 10 studies to 1 that show that masks do work, and mask ordinances increase usage, and if we do that, we'll save lives. So thank you for taking action.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Amanda Johnson, and I'm a Yankton resident. And I did not plan on speaking when I came here tonight, but I think it's a very, very important discussion. I wanted to hear the discussion, and I think it's a very, very important vote. And I'm confused by all the division because everyone wants the same thing. We all want to be healthy. We want to keep ourselves healthy. We want to keep our families healthy and our community healthy. And when it comes to masking, there are so many scientific studies and so much information out there that completely contradicts the scientific studies and information that supports masking. And so I think it's a very divided subject, and I understand because when people feel their health is threatened or their family's health is threatened, it's claws come out. That's understandable, and we all want the same thing. But for every study that shows you masking is effective, there's a study that shows you it's not. There are a lot of people who know so much about health and how to keep your body and immunity and keep your immune system healthy that completely disagree with masking. And I think that it's important to understand the kind of vote that you are voting on tonight. It's a very, very slippery slope when you give the government the authority to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body. That's heading down a very dangerous path. And for me, someone who has a young child, it's really hitting home with me. And like I said, we all want the same thing. And I really like what I agree with what Michael said. I really like what Kurt said. We've been, COVID, this has been since March, and there's so little talk about how to really boost your immunity. I mean, we know that the healthier we are, the better chance we have of fighting off any virus, and you can't hide from a virus. And I understand that we are just trying to do what we can and take measures to make a difference, because you don't want to do nothing when you feel that, there's chaos or there's sick people. Nobody wants to see anyone sick. Nobody wants family members in the hospital. But when there is science that is so strong on both sides of the argument, it's very, very dangerous to put a blanket mandate out there to say one size fits all. Masking is not healthy for all people. Most people will agree that they do not feel good when they're wearing their masks. So to be a contributing member of society, the first thing you can do is keep yourself healthy. And a lot of people cannot keep themselves healthy being masked 8 hours a day, or we do not know the long-term effects of masking our children. And I think that's just very important. And I hope that you understand the seriousness of the vote you're voting on tonight. It is so very, very important. And I understand the sides to this. We all do, but we're all after the same thing. And I really implore you to understand the kind of precedent you could set tonight if you set a mandate for our city. So that's just, I feel like I had to say my piece, because I feel very, very strongly about this. And I know other members of the community who don't feel comfortable stepping up and speaking out feel the same.
We're at 3 minutes. Thank you. Do we have anyone else? That's it? Okay. Mr. Mingo, what do we have for YouTube comments or questions?
We have a number of comments. Early on, they were addressing the audio issues, and there have been a number of chats occurring amongst commenters, and we will not read those as previously discussed, but so far the comments directed to the commission are from Ripping Lips. Mask mandate is a violation of the Bill of Rights. These communists are trying to violate our procedural due process guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is absolute law. From Brianna Brandt, we have, so are businesses required to enforce it themselves? That's a question. I don't feel like this is going to change anything for those that refuse to wear a mask unless a fine is attached. So I don't know if that question was more rhetorical or if we want Ross to weigh in there.
Mr. Mingo, thank you. We can answer that question. Yes, we included in the language of the ordinance is that folks, businesses, public places post signs at their entrance indicating that masks are required. And we ask that the businesses, if somebody enters without a mask, that they request the person put on a mask. And if they do not, then the business has a couple of different options. They can ask again, or they can ask the individual to leave as a last resort, or at whatever point they're comfortable, they can contact our folks who can confirm that they're then not welcome and are trespassing, so it would be enforced in a similar way that a trespass would. So there is no criminal penalty or fine, and we're not sending our officers out to look for people without masks. That wouldn't be the intent, but if a business owner is having trouble complying with, having someone comply with the ordinance, they can contact our folks to help them out. Chief, is that, I see you nodding your head back there, so that's the way that we would treat enforcement. But it's really, I would say, if the commission passes this tonight, the onus on everybody to hold each other accountable and remind each other and help each other out. We do have some masks available in some of our public buildings for people if they're unable to comply and don't have access to masking, to masks. So thank you. I'll let you continue with the comment.
Night 347 says, is not this mask mandate simply blaming COVID cases on those who oppose masks? Law and civil liberties are serious issues. To curtail these would require substantial evidence of efficacy. The same commenter said, what evidence is basing the decision to push for such a mandate? These mandates have been enacted all across the world, yet cases continue to rise with seemingly no effect. Becky Canton says, check out what Brookings did and how they have leveled off. Rippin' Lips says, people are still getting so-called sick in places that have mask mandates. It says right on the box of the common blue ear loop mask that it does not protect against COVID. And he or she also comments, cases doesn't mean an infection. Dr. Fauci says non-symptomatic individuals have never been the driving force of the spread of respiratory illnesses. Valerie Grave appreciates everyone's comments and states the mask wearing I see in the community is close to 85%. Everyone who doesn't have a mask on likely has a medical condition. And Becky Canton asks, are you going to limit the amount of people in businesses?
That is not part of the ordinance, so the answer to that would be no, Mr. Mingo.
Kevin Bray states that most of the data discussed about Dr. Fauci comments were made before we knew what we know now, and he supports mask wearing. And that is where we're at with comments directed to the commission.
Sorry, Mr. Mingo, there was one comment that asked a question about evidence, and I guess I didn't, is that a question that's geared towards finding a response, or did you indicate that was rhetorical?
So that question was, as you read through the thread, was directed at another commenter. You know, if we can certainly read it.
No, thank you. If it was directed towards another comment, then that's not necessary. Thank you.
That's all we have at this point then.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you again for everyone who's provided feedback on the ordinance this evening, both in the audience and virtually. With that, we will close public comment and begin discussion among the commissioners. I guess I would start off asking, does anyone, what is your pleasure? Would you like to make a motion?
Moves to approve. Weber seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Now what commission discussion do we have?
This is Commissioner Minor and Assistant Commissioner Mochi, who's helping me. I think it's important. I appreciate that there are a lot of different perspectives. For months and months and months, we have looked at studies and looked at what's going on in various cities and compared this to that and the language of this. And this is us now. And so when we talk about masks working or not working, I am part of one of the only public schools in South Dakota. I'm a teacher in that system, and we've had mandatory masks since the middle of August, and we are not seeing community spread within our classroom. Since the last few meetings that we've spoken, when we talked at our November 23rd meeting, the community of Yankton was averaging 28 cases per day, right? When we spoke at our December 2nd meeting, we were averaging 34 cases per day. Now at this December 9th meeting, we're averaging 42 cases per day. I can see that there is community spread happening in the community. And last week in our school district, as Brian Hunoff stated, we had 2 cases. So it's hard for me to believe that the masks aren't effective to some degree. We can argue for years about what degree that is. The letters are a matter of public record, right? The public will have a chance to read those.
Yes, Commissioner Minor, if they were submitted to us between November 8th and 3 p.m. yesterday, November 8th. They're a matter of the public record. They're on our website right now. That includes email comments, Facebook comments. We'll also include the YouTube comments from this evening. So all of those materials are available on our website under the City Commission packet for this evening.
Thank you. It's really difficult. I don't know how you can read the comments. I don't know how you can listen to Doug Ekman and Mary Milroy. I don't know how you can read the letters from a variety of healthcare professionals in our community and not hear the stress, the pleading for some sort of mandate. We've been asking nicely for months, and it's gotten us so far. I agree with Bernie. I think it is time for the commission to take action. When you read those letters, this is us. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't a nurse in a hospital 1,000 miles away. This is us, and these are people we know and love writing from the hospital, writing a letter to the commission from their bed in the hospital as they're sick with COVID, saying we've got to do more. I understand, and I get really frustrated by the way that masks have been politicized, but just because people politicize masks doesn't make a mask political, in my opinion. And my vote tonight is not political. My vote tonight will be a vote for public health and safety in our community. It just makes common sense. We have a pandemic of a respiratory virus that is spread by respiratory droplets. If you cover your respiratory droplets and I cover my respiratory droplets when we're interacting, that is common sense that we will slow down. I know we can't stop the virus, but it is common sense that we can slow it down. I'm very moved by the way our healthcare professionals have been speaking up. And I think if we don't take action to help them, we will be in a whole lot of trouble. We talk about the healthcare system, but we have to understand that system is composed of people. If we don't take care of our healthcare workers, we will end up being a city with diminished healthcare or very little healthcare. That's my 2 cents.
This is Commissioner Mosier. I would like to, Ross, if you could help me answer a few questions. I've talked to several business owners, business managers who are very concerned about this and what work, this additional work this is going to cause. One of them asked me on the ordinance, it says must make reasonable efforts to ensure that all patrons, employees, and other persons. They asked me to define reasonable. I'm hoping you can, in legalese. What does that mean to make reasonable efforts as a business? And then I have another one related to business.
Yeah, no problem. So we had, back in law school, we had a contracts professor that was very fond of using the word reasonable to describe things. And he would even raise his voice funny when he would say it, but essentially we call it the reasonable person standard, and the only person's opinion that really matters in what constitutes whether something is reasonable from a position of law is the judges in a dispute. Because subjectively we can all differ on what we understand reasonable to mean. Former commissioner, now current circuit judge David Knopf was fond of saying, when you have a reasonable standard, you kind of know it when you see it, if it's either reasonable or unreasonable. I wish I could give you a better definition, but given what this is, in any given context, the point is an effort should be made. that effort should be reasonable. People could disagree on what constitutes reasonable, but make an effort. Do the right thing, make an effort, assuming that's the position of this commission if this ordinance is passed. I believe Mayor Johnson at one point said, try not to make perfect the enemy of good. It's difficult to draft something like this to fit every scenario. And I think we've got some leeway, and our property owners, our business owners have some leeway, given that this is enforceable not based on the fact that someone is being unreasonable in their unwillingness to wear a mask, but rather a property owner believing that a person is not being reasonable. And they have the decision to turn people out when they believe that a person is not properly wearing a mask when they should be. And that decision to turn someone out is enforceable under the laws of trespass, for which a person may be arrested and or fined. So I wish I had a more concrete, satisfying definition of what constitutes reasonable. But at the end of the day, you could say reasonable is in the eyes of the property owner, because they're the ones who have the teeth to enforce this.
Okay, then I'm hoping you can help me through another question that I got, and that is under the no penalty, section 3. It does say that business owners are encouraged and directed to refuse service and turn out all persons refusing to cooperate with the terms of the ordinance. Walk me through this, Ross, because I have a business saying, I am, first of all, not going to refuse business clients or customers, paying customers being in my business because they refuse to wear a mask. I had another business say, do I have to follow it? If I as a business owner decide I don't want to have people wear masks, what happens?
From a legal framework, we would describe this as a moral obligation. If it's the law, you have a moral obligation to follow the law. If you have an uncooperative property owner that refuses to follow the law, there is not a mechanism within this that could fine or subject that property owner, that business owner, to arrest or some other legal sanction. This is a declaration that it's the law in Yankton, and we are on our honor to follow it. Does that prompt any follow-ups, Commissioner Mosier?
I don't think so. I think it was just one that said if we choose not to follow it, is there any penalty? And basically the answer is no.
Correct.
Okay, I got one more, as long as we're talking about the ordinance, and I'll save personal comments for later. On Section E, Ross, I know you and I have had this conversation, but I think for the public, I want to clarify this. So Section E talks about with a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability that makes it unreasonable for an individual to wear a face covering. Our conversation, which I think is going to be very helpful for folks and have been questions I've got this week as well, is an individual walks into a public place, somebody tells that individual they have to put a mask on, they say, I have a medical reason not to, what happens?
That can be, the answer to that question can be rather nuanced. My recommendation is if you get a call like that, maybe call your attorney. We have an obligation under the law, if we are operating businesses open to the public, to make reasonable accommodations for people who have a disability. That accommodation needs to be requested. So in this situation, the proper approach would be, excuse me, sir, you must wear a mask here. And they would have to say, I'm sorry, I have a medical condition that prevents me from wearing a mask. I don't know that a property owner would be on their honor to confirm that that's in fact the case. If I was going to be representing that individual, I would say, you got to be really careful. You don't want to run afoul of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's another nuanced issue, which again, leaves the decision up to the property owner or the business owner and how they handle that situation. Because again, it's the law of trespass. And, you know, they also have to worry about civil liability for turning somebody away that is claiming that they have a legitimate disability. Now, if there is an actual disability and the person is thrown out, that could result in civil litigation. But the reality is, for that law to actually apply and for liability to apply, there must actually be a disability. But again, it's up to the business or property owner to make those determinations.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, while I may, there's a delay on YouTube, so we did have a couple comments that came in probably in the second before you close the period, and I just want to be fair to the two folks that wrote in here and make sure that they were able to get their comments read. We have Mr. Mingo read our YouTube comments. We've been doing that since we've had these online or hybrid meetings, which, because if anybody knows our organization and they know Mr. Mingo, he's about the most fair and level person there is, and so certainly he did not try to exclude these comments. So I'm going to do my best here. I wish I had my reading glasses. Valerie Grave indicates in her comment, I appreciate everyone's comment. The mask wearing I see in the community is close to 85%. Everyone who doesn't have a mask on likely has a medical condition. Medical conditions do not always show on the outside. For example, anxiety or panic attacks, asthma, etc. The only thing a mask mandate will do is encourage people to attack people with anxiety, possibly to the point of a suicide. I would hate to see that happen. Can't we just agree that everyone is doing their best? That's a question. I think that's a rhetorical. And then Night 347 says, I was asking if the evidence underlying the proposition could be cited. And so he's clarifying my question to Mr. Mingo about his comment. I think probably there's a lot of different studies and research, as we've talked about, and we don't have anything specific to cite in the ordinance. And I don't believe Ross has crafted the ordinance based on one study or another. So the answer to that would be no, I can't cite that evidence. So thank you, and excuse me, and I apologize for those two comments that didn't get in with the public comment period.
And a quick follow-up to that, thank you, City Manager. An ordinance does not require that a specific study for something like this be cited. One thing the law does require is that an ordinance be based on something less than arbitrary foundation. So that is one reason that when we draft an ordinance, particularly in a situation where we believe it may be controversial, we include a laundry list of recitals, and you'll see that at the first 2 pages worth of the document are all reasons why this is before the commission, and if it's passed, why it would in fact be passed, so that we have the legal standard met at the time that the ordinance is passed.
Is Dr. Milroy with us?
Yes,
There?
I am.
Okay. I would just say that the health board recommendation.
I am here.
Yeah. Hey, Mary, I would say the health board recommendation. The health board recommendation was based on a body of scientific evidence, and I think you would be best suited to address that.
Yes, oh, thank you. Happy to address it. And I would say, yes, certainly I can understand the confusion that there is a lot of information out. But I would say again that it's important as you look at the many studies to truly consider the source and make sure that it is a trusted, reliable source. Also, I think it's important to look at the timing of the report and the evidence, because I think in this case, certainly the timing is very important, because goodness, a year ago, I don't think any of us would have dreamed we were here and nobody had heard of the coronavirus. And so I think over the past year, we've learned a great deal about this. And what I would say as far as relevant information at this time is that just this very week, the CDC, which is certainly a trusted source, for the very first time ever, came out with their strongest recommendation in favor of mask wearing, and in fact, urged universal mask wearing, and that was only published this week. And I quote that they said that there is now compelling evidence that now supports the benefit of cloth masks for both source control, which is to others, and to protect the wearer. They also reiterated that in looking at coronavirus infections at this time, about half of the infections do seem to be caused by persons without symptoms. So I would say there's very strong evidence from the CDC strongly supporting the medical evidence that masks are effective. I think one thing that's really relevant this week also is that just today, North Dakota Governor Burgum extended North Dakota's statewide mask mandate. North Dakota passed a statewide mask mandate on November 13th, and today, and I quote their governor, it appears to be working. It appears to take the pressure off of our hospital system and nursing homes. And for that reason, they have extended their statewide mask mandate to January 18. And they have, since the beginning, or probably mid-November when they passed the mask mandate, the state has experienced more than a 50% drop in active COVID-19 cases. And I think in many ways, North Dakota is a very similar state. They were experiencing much of the same crisis that the state of South Dakota and certainly the community of Yankton is experiencing. So I think that considering this temporary mask mandate is certainly based on medical recommendation and science, as well as examples that we're seeing more of every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Milroy. Further commission discussion.
This is Commissioner Benson. I have actually really struggled with this mandate, not because I don't want to support our healthcare system, but because we live in a community that's good about stepping up and helping one another when there's a need. If there's a flood, people start sandbagging. And if you notice in our community right now, the mask wearing has gone up significantly. In most places you do see 85 to 90% mask wearing. And I really was hoping that we could keep it where we encouraged one another and we did the right thing because it was the right thing to do versus putting a temporary law in the books that is not enforceable. Oh, I mean, unless it's a trespassing situation. So unfortunately, it's perceived that we don't support our healthcare system unless we put in the mandate. And unfortunately, perceptions become reality. But I just hope the community knows that the commission wants the best for the healthcare system. No matter which way the vote goes, I don't think there's anyone on the commission that doesn't want the best for our community.
I can follow up, Commissioner Benson. I do think, because it's something that she said that's been on my mind, we've been confused of an either or. Either you're for a mask mandate or you're against healthcare. And I would challenge that that is not the case whatsoever. It can be both, that we can be having these discussions about what a mask mandate means for our community while absolutely supporting people making the right decision to wear masks. In April, we were commended for passing Resolution 2026, which to me, and I said this in the last meeting, I feel more meets what the CDC is asking us to do than this ordinance before us tonight. The ordinance before us tonight presents one leg of a stool. The CDC has encouraged us all. We have 5 sections in the resolution, and since that's not in front of them, I'll just quickly reiterate what they are. Stay at home if you're not feeling well. Limit your visits. Reduce trips if you're going to make a trip. Be respectful when you come back, and limit your gatherings. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. Section 2 references healthcare and what we need to do there to make logical decisions. Section 3 talks about safe practices, to use good respiratory hygiene, cover our mouths and noses and our elbows when we cough, wash our hands, adhere to social distancing, wear face masks is in that resolution for anybody over the age of 2 when interacting with others not within their household. All of that language in the ordinance tonight, minus respiratory hygiene and washing hands, and then the true definition of social distance. Section 4, which has been addressed tonight, I completely worry about is the mental and emotional health of our community. Section 4 has engaging people in outdoor activities, being good, helpful neighbors, helping one another, checking in on one another, and supporting our local businesses, I think is all very critical. Section 5 addresses businesses and asking our businesses to enforce social distancing strategy for patrons and employees. You know, we're living in a very rare time. I'm not sure anybody alive right now could reference a time that is more rare than what we're in, at least for those of us in the ages that I would say probably are represented in this room. So it's rare for what we experienced in our lifetime, and I'm going to be personally honest, I hope we never have to again. Daily, we have to make very uncomfortable decisions about how to best tackle this pandemic. Preaching to the choir, I know, but I have personally missed out on birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays with my family. My parents are watching their grandchildren play their sports online. I fully support encouraging others to wear masks. I have appreciated, I really do, all the feedback we've received, and I don't disrespect anyone's thoughts and feelings, which is why I voted early in April to support the resolution. I don't think any of us thought in April when we voted that through that in December we'd be having this conversation. I think all of us thought we'd be spending Christmas with our families as we always have. That's not happening. We missed Thanksgiving. We're going to miss Christmas. I've had COVID. I told you that, so I'm not disclosing my own situation. I don't doubt it's real. I really don't. I live in a household of 5 people. 4 of us have had it. So I know it's real. I know it's there. And I think we have to do what we need to do in our community to keep each other safe. I do, however, also believe that putting a law in the books with no penalty is not the answer either. In the words of a wise mentor, sometimes the best thing is the least thing. I do really believe the best thing for our community is supporting and working on Resolution 2026 to support all areas of 5 sections that we put in that resolution, in which masks are included, along with many other CDC recommendations. We can add the words required to beef it up. That's what some of the other communities like Watertown have done, working on wording in their resolution to beef it up, to encourage other citizens in the community to do what's right. In the coming weeks and months, we will have several other issues to work on for our great city. COVID has definitely consumed all of those conversations, and obviously we know in speaking to Doug tonight that vaccines are coming through, and what do we do in our community to address that? I think we might be forgetting very nearly, if you don't drive by Memorial Park, we have to prepare for a pool that's going to be opening. We have to have conversations about our wastewater treatment plant. We're still working on flooding. Yes, COVID is a big topic, and we have a lot more to do in our community. I would like us to see us put measurable metrics in place to track our progress and to discuss potentially maybe putting it on every first meeting month, the first meeting of the month, what some of those measurable metrics can be and where as a community we're working towards that. And then as we see ourselves meeting those metrics, to celebrate our progress. We have been a community, as Commissioner Benson said, that works together. We step up and we do what's right for each other. So let's try to aim towards some positive outcomes and some metrics, and then celebrate those, and then figure out what else we have to improve on. We have to work together. I have seen more division in this community in these last couple of weeks, and it completely, and I'm going to get emotional, I'm sorry, breaks my heart. This is not the Yankton that I have loved. This is not the Yankton that I chose to move to many years ago. And it's getting difficult to be the Yankton that I want to raise my children in, because it is so divisive. And we're so polarized that we're forgetting how to work together. We're forgetting that once this is done, we have to be a community again. And I would like us to see us take more aggressive measures on figuring out how do we overall address this. Masks is one. There are other things that we could be doing in the community that I'm afraid if we vote this ordinance in, gets lax and we're not going to see any changes. We're coming into Christmas. Nothing in this ordinance addresses the biggest places that people are picking up the virus, in bars and restaurants as they're gathering. Family gatherings. People are, we know people traveled for Thanksgiving. Those that didn't travel for Thanksgiving probably could be regretting that decision, are going to travel for Christmas. Nothing in this mandate addresses family gatherings and capacity of crowds that we could see in those areas. So I would encourage us to think about how we can work to help our community survive this pandemic. No matter what happens tonight, I would beg the community to please not shame anybody that is not wearing a mask. You're not in their shoes. You don't know what's going on in their life. So let's not turn to that either, no matter what happens tonight. Support each other, figure out ways that we can lift each other up, and together, not divided, we can get through this. Thank you.
Now, this is Commissioner Brunick. The divisiveness I agree with, and I wholeheartedly agree that everyone on the commission is trying to do what they feel is right for the community. I don't question that a moment. With the divisiveness, I've been a proponent of the ordinance, the ordinance without enforcement, because it's a compromise. I hear if it doesn't have a punishment, then it's not worth anything. I don't agree with that. And I hear about the other things that we are, the gatherings, all the other things, but this is something I think that we can do, and it can be a compromise. It does not make everybody happy. I've had numerous people reach out to me that are for mandate, for enforcement, for restrictions, and I've had plenty of folks reach out to me that are against the mandate. So I view it as this is a compromise. I said it at the meeting, not last meeting, but the meeting before. The compromise, that elusive term, that term you always hear, but you barely see. I would just like us to come to a compromise. I think that the facts that it is on the owners of establishments to make decisions as far as what is best in their establishment. That is the point of not having the enforcement. It is not someone coming into their establishment. I'm self-employed. I have my own place. I feel that I should be in control of my place. And I feel the non-enforcement measure of it still allows me to be in control of my place. It also allows me, if I am to enforce the mask mandate in my establishment, it also shows that the city has my back. That if I call in and say that I have someone here that won't wear a mask and won't leave, they will come on a trespassing deal and know that I'm not telling someone that they have to leave while the city is saying that they're doing nothing wrong. So I'm viewing this ordinance as a compromise, and I'm hoping that it will be successful. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Sarda. First, I want to thank Doug Acker and Dr. Milroy for your leadership on what you've all done to help us through this. There's obviously a lot of people in the community who have weighed in on this, and we've read their letters, we've read their emails, their posts. I just appreciate all the leadership that is out there that has helped us through this. And as a commission, it's something we can do. It's fairly easy. There's no fines to it. Let's try to do our part and help everyone else who is working very hard in the hospitals, the schools, the school board, you name it, the superintendent. They feel that this is a good thing to wear the mask, and they've given us their support. And as a commission, it seems like the minimal thing that we can do for our community.
This is Commissioner
Reiner here. Sorry, jumping in. I don't think we should be afraid to recalibrate as we go here. I know the resolution in April was a good resolution, but having being a member of the Yankton School District community in mid-September, we gathered in the theater and discussed the crush that was happening to teachers district-wide. And there was a wide variety of perspectives in the room about what to do, how to do it, a half day, a Wednesday, a Friday, just hang in there until the 9 weeks. And as a person who stood up in that theater and spoke about the crush, I needed to be heard. The teachers needed to be heard. We were frontline, and somebody, not me, somebody said if we don't have functioning teachers, then we can't have functioning schools. And it's just, I just can't escape that parallel. We're hearing all kinds of voices, and it's not that the voices aren't valid, but our frontline workers in healthcare are sounding every alarm. And I think it's okay at this point to recalibrate and say for the next 3 months, we're going to try this ordinance. Okay, and I know in our school district, we alleviated 99% of the problems by having a mask to hand to a student that walked in the front door. And I don't know if that's a reasonable accommodation. I mean, that's a Ross thing. But I think if we really want to work together, then we have to do what we can as a community to help ease the burden where the burden is the greatest. And right now that's in our healthcare system. That's with our healthcare workers. We're seeing it, we're feeling it. It troubles me that we get questions from people who, before we passed the ordinance or not, are saying, well, what happens if I don't follow it? Because then we're not all in it together. You know, if we pass the ordinance, it's a reasonable expectation that businesses will make the accommodations and do what's necessary, that our police force will work with business owners if necessary. And it's a reasonable expectation for our citizens in our community, if they're going to be in public spaces, that they themselves will wear masks and that they can expect others to be masks. I just don't think any of that is unreasonable, even in the slightest.
So this is Commissioner Schramm, and you know, I fully believe in the science. I think that there's strong enough information from valuable sources that masking is effective. I struggled for the longest time with this issue because to me, the compromise, which I do compromise on a daily basis with my work, is the lack of enforcement doesn't seem like it's effective. But in listening to the conversation tonight, what really kind of struck home for me is the difference between what we had in place as a resolution in April and what we would put in place if this passes tonight is that moral obligation that you know, this is a law, not just a resolution. And so I believe wholeheartedly that people in our community do the right thing. Nobody wants to hurt each other, and everyone generally follows laws. And so I think if this mandate would become effective as an ordinance, even without enforcement, generally people are going to follow laws. And then contributing to that, or that would help contribute to what Doug Eckern was saying. And in my line of work, I deal with a lot of people who are moving to this area because of one of Yankton's biggest strengths, and that is our medical community. And for a town our size to have access to the medical care we have is incredible. I would hate to think that assets at the hospital are tied up dealing with COVID, which we may help reduce with masking, and somebody else comes in with an illness or an accident, a heart attack, something that they can't get the service they need, because that is a strength of our community. And so I think we have to listen to the medical experts and disregard, not entirely disregard the policy as whole, but feel that they need our support. And I don't disagree with what was said tonight, that it shouldn't be an either or. It's been made that way, but by making this effective as an ordinance, I think we are doing generally the best course of action for a short time to help our medical community, keep our community as a whole safer.
This is Commissioner Weber. There's been a lot of talk about how as a culture we step up and we help each other. I think about, I've grown up here, and I think about the stories of area farmers when somebody gets sick or a farmer dies and the whole neighborhood comes and steps up to help. This is another one of those ways that we step up and we help each other. As a mental health provider, I have worked with many individuals over the last 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, who have dealt with anxiety regarding wearing masks, regarding not wearing masks. This is something that we're all having to make decisions about. When I think about all of my colleagues, all of you colleagues here on this board, none of us, when we were thinking about leadership, ever thought that we would have to make decisions about this. We don't relish the decision of annoying or causing division with any of our neighbors or within our group together. But I can say that in my position, through my work and in volunteer areas in the community, I have listened to so many medical providers and first responders, and I am going to be supportive of this temporary mandate as a way to support each other in this community.
This is Commissioner Maibaum. My mother, Donna Maibaum, who was basically a saint, regularly donated blood, and she encouraged me off and on many times over the year to donate blood. The pitch is pretty consistent when it comes to blood drives. Your one donation can save 3 lives. And we lost Mom over the holidays 2 years ago, and this was the first year that I decided to listen to her voice in my head and donate. And as it turns out, I'm O negative, the universal donor, high demand for my blood, particularly in emergency rooms. I'm set up now to donate for the rest of my days. And believe me, I cried it out over knowing that over the past 20 years, it's fair to say that 120 lives may have been lost because of my selfishness. I share that because just as this isn't a debate over the efficacy of masks, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we add any language mandating blood donations here tonight, this is a real life example of me, a flawed human being, making the decision on my own to simply honor my mother. My ask, not my mandate, would be for everyone here, particularly if you don't know your blood type, to please reach out to our mayor, who helps coordinate blood drives up at Avera, and find out if 45 minutes of your time twice a year can be worth it. Folks, believe me, this coming from a guy who has lost his parents, a brother, a sister, a nephew, aunts, uncles, all well before their time. This is my 4th year getting to serve, and I'll admit that the younger version of me that held this position may have even thought that there's a chance this commission could actually have the power over who lives, who dies, and who tells their story. I said it before in the press in Yankton, regardless of the disasters we may face, our local government should be looked to for the stability it can provide in good times and tough times. I want to apologize to everyone here tonight because what you're going through is an intense period of instability brought on not just by a global pandemic, but by your city commission, by me. I've watched the city council meetings from communities like Watertown, Mitchell, and most recently Rapid City. Like those local governments, this here tonight is not a debate amongst your commissioners over the efficacy of masks. It's over the efficacy of a mandate to enact a simplified, broad ordinance where the chances of causing more confusion grow exponentially, or to enact a multi-page detailed ordinance where I can guarantee the unintended effect could be that it would be routinely needed to get revised and amended during what can only be described as what remains to this day a dynamic situation when it comes to the guidelines we see from the CDC. Back in November, when I made the motion to remove the agenda item over a mask mandate, what I failed to do and regret terribly was to let folks know that I wasn't just in favor of the awareness campaign, but that I would also be freely giving of myself, my time, and my talent, my career expertise in marketing to fulfill the goals that I know we can achieve together. Right before school resumed earlier this year, Liz Healy from Avera, myself, and a handful of other volunteers put together a video for students over proper mask usage. And the day we started filming, there was enough confusion from some researchers and in the media over the efficacy of neck gaiters compared to other masks that we had to remove the segment and those props from the shooting script. My point in bringing that up is an awareness campaign can be far more nimble, far more targeted, and far more successful at sending the right message in a way that's consistent with whatever the guidelines are at a given point in time. This commission made an excellent decision months ago when it was unanimously resolute in affirming the importance of following CDC guidelines. Simple, straightforward, and no confusion over intent. But what we know now, it basically amounted to an unfunded mandate, the same kind of unfunded mandates that have plagued our federal and state governments for generations. The funding that's come together is significant, but we're ultimately talking about reaching the hearts and minds of folks well beyond our own city limits, and that's important because our own healthcare system serves folks well beyond our own city limits. No qualified public health official has ever demanded the heavy hand of government force folks to stop the spread or eliminate the curve. Although I'll admit that kind of thinking has crept its way into my prayers before. And there's a big part of my heart that truly wishes your commission could do that. I've been told multiple times now to support the mandate approach because it's the least you can do. For me, I didn't campaign to represent you on the promise that I do the least I can do. I want to go above and beyond and have our community be a model to other struggling cities in our state. But my conversations with the team putting together the awareness campaign barely got off the ground. And now we're here back in front of all of you. I will say it again, I intend to support the awareness campaign in more ways than one, freely giving of my time and talent. I believe with all my heart that we can avoid any more divisiveness and achieve something truly special as we work together to slow the spread of this deadly virus. Certainly though, we're technically still early in the process over this ordinance, and we've had the opportunity of seeing how these kinds of discussions can play out at other city councils, just as they did with our colleagues in Rapid City. If this commission chooses to lead with a mandate-first approach for whatever it's worth, what we're talking about then may very well be better served by the PR and communications teams who specialize in damage control, and that's not me. When I was a kid, my mom brought me over to the Lewis and Clark Playhouse by the lake to see Steel Magnolias. And I'm not kidding, what I witnessed was the best acting I've ever seen in my life. The gal who played the main character is screaming out of sadness and anger that she's lost her daughter and she just wants to hit something. My mom and I and everyone in the crowd were moved to tears. Sally Field had nothing on this actress. I feel what many of you out there are feeling over this. Please, folks, hit us. Hit us with your anger. Trust me, it's part of our job. Whatever tonight's outcome, please do not just please do your best to not let that anger and frustrations affect the relationships with your fellow community members. That's my big hope during this holiday season.
Is there any, excuse me, is there any more commission discussion? Okay, well, I think what we've heard here tonight is this pandemic has caused us all to sacrifice. None of us have been spared. It's a natural disaster that's on a scale that we've never experienced before. And so it's created challenges for all of us, and it affects us in different ways. You know, some of us, it's hit very close to home. We've lost family members or friends. For others, maybe it's been more distant. Maybe you just watch the numbers on the Department of Health website, or you see the numbers in the newspaper. Whatever the case is, it has impacted all of us. We've all had to sacrifice visiting with our friends, seeing family. I mean, that has taken a toll over the last 9 to 10 months, and we've got a light at the end of the tunnel now with the vaccine shipping this next week. We've still got a long road ahead of us. It's probably going to be the summer, we hear, before we have widespread vaccinations. And I think now's the time that we really make this last push. We dig deep and we do all we can to make sure as many of us as possible see that light at the end of the tunnel. And I think what's on the table tonight with this ordinance is we're saying that mask wearing in the city of Yankton is the law. It doesn't have specific enforcement tied to it. That's true. That is a compromise that was made. I have said before that I think enforcement was an important part of this, but I still believe that this ordinance will be impactful. The body of science that's been built around mask wearing is, in my opinion, it's not just in my opinion, it is growing and it's becoming more inarguable, especially with the CDC now saying that there should be universal mask wearing. We've had, just within the state, the South Dakota Medical Association endorse mask mandates in communities that are considering them. Avera Health has taken that same position, the Yankton Medical Clinic Board. We have to listen to our health officials when we are in a public health emergency. And as a politician in this public health emergency, it's my responsibility to keep as many people safe as possible. And mask wearing has been shown to be the least impactful, the least distressing thing you can do for a community to reduce the spread. It doesn't mean we're going to stop it. You're still going to see cases in states that have mandates. Yeah, they've seen peaks as well. And so it's entirely possible we'll see that again in Yankton. It doesn't mean that mask wearing doesn't work. It just means that we're reducing the spread that otherwise could have happened. Masks are not magic. They're only as good as the wearer. They're only as good as how many of us are wearing them when we're out and about. So I agree with the sentiments of many of the commissioners here tonight that we all want the best for our community. We all are worried about the impacts that these discussions and this stress have on our relationships and our lives. I think a lot of us have felt that we may lose friendships over this, and certainly we hope that's not the case. And so with that, I would ask one more time if there's any more commission discussion. And if not, I would ask Al for roll call. So please proceed, Al.
Okay, and this is roll call on old business item number 1. As it stands right now, there's been no amendments offered or anything, so it's as presented. And we'll begin with Mosier.
Mosier votes no.
Mosier's a nay. Schramm.
Schramm votes aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber votes aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunig, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is no.
Mybom is no. Minor.
Minor's aye.
Minor is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. The old business item 2-1 passes 7-2.
Mayor, so the public's aware, we will send this to the press in Dakota tomorrow, and we will ask that they publish Friday, which is December 11th, so it'll be effective Friday morning upon publication.
This would also be a good time. I think the staff will have worked up some materials that will be made available to people, signage, maybe a brief explainer.
Yes, thank you. We'll have some educational communication available on our social media as well as our website. We'll also have a sign which folks can print and put in their entrances. You do not have to use the City of Yankton sign that we'll produce, but we'll have those produced. We'll also equip our public buildings that people with those signs so people can access those if they want to pick them up, as well as masks as well for folks that aren't able to comply right away or maybe don't have access right away. So we will have educational materials beyond just the language of the ordinance. We'll also have sort of a basic, here's when I need to wear a mask, here's when I don't, here are the exceptions, so that it's a little easier to read. Sometimes the language Ross puts together is maybe not as easy to understand is how we typically communicate, so he gets all the legal information in there. So that's where that will stand, and then we'll look for people's input and questions. We know we'll have them. We'll take questions at City Hall, and we'll take questions on social media, as we always do, and we'll be happy to help people comply with the ordinance as passed by the commission.
Thank you, Amy. With that, we have no new business tonight, and we have no other business. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to once again thank the commission, who I know really struggled with this issue, and again remind us all that we all, as Commissioner Mosier talked about, we all have a lot of issues to work on together in the future, so let's make sure that if there's any stress building up between ourselves, that we talk to one another and make sure that this doesn't become personal. And I would encourage everyone out there in your lives to do that as well, because we're going to see the other side of this, and we all hope there are better days ahead. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Sarda moves to adjourn.
Minor seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Al, roll call, please.
Find my mic button there. Okay, and this is a motion to adjourn the special city commission meeting of December 9th. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Maibaum.
Maibaum is aye.
Maibaum is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Mosier.
Mosier, aye.
Mosier is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. Motion to adjourn passes 9-0.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned. Be safe and be healthy.
Thanks, everyone.